and my physical symptoms were dramatic.
It was moving and kind of spreading.
It wasn't just one place, and it looked mean. Definitely an emergency.
It was a serious illness. Physical dimension was worsening.
They didn't think she was going to be cured. What if she died, and what would life be without her?
I don't want anyone else projecting to me that I'm going to die.
Welcome to The Incurables. I'm Don Wildman. Sometimes it takes a catastrophic event to disrupt the way we see our world, forcing us to question our assumptions and open our minds to new alternatives. When Bonnie Bell faced a life-threatening illness, she saw two roads down which she could journey. The first was well-traveled. Having worked in hospitals and with doctors, it was a road she knew well. It was the medical road. But something inside told her this path would lead into darkness. The road Bonnie chose was personal and self-guided, but she would be the first to tell you it was also frightening. On her journey, she met a remarkable physician, a healer trained in both Western and Eastern medicine. He helped guide her. And by integrating the best aspects of modern medicine and alternative healing, he brought about an astounding recovery few doctors would have thought possible.
Though I knew in my heart that I would recover, it was frightening.
I could see that she was in a lot of pain, and I could see that, to me, it felt like it was getting worse.
Usually when you see this as a conventional doctor, you tell yourself, this is never going to heal. I've never seen such a thing in my career, probably will not. Nobody has seen such a thing. It's really something you see once in your life, and you assume it will never heal. It can't heal.
She said that she wanted me to see it because she knew that I wouldn't freak out.
It was clear that she was gravely ill at that point. You know, I really had to ask her, do you want to live?
There's no way to tell what would have happened if I had sought medical help earlier. The truth is, the way I chose brought me into health.
Bonnie Bell grew up in Kansas City, where her parents were both social workers. Even as a little girl, Bonnie was drawn to the outdoors. Her home was planted as a show garden, and Bonnie developed a passion for flowers.
Maybe you could say I was a nature spirit by tendency. I was a person who just blossomed in the garden. At 13, I would say my spiritual search began. I was always fascinated with mythology, ancient history. I began to focus on really learning about what had come to the West from the East. But I studied all the world's traditions.
Bonnie's journey took her all around the world. In the Hawaiian Islands, she first became ill.
I got scratched by a cat and got in my bloodstream a mycobacteria that causes a disease that's called in the vernacular cat scratch fever.
Cat scratch fever is rarely a serious illness, but it can cause fatigue, fever, and infections of the lymphatic system. In Bonnie's case, the infection caused a swollen and painful lymph node under her jaw.
I knew what it was. I wasn't really concerned about it, but it got aggravated at some point, and I had outpatient surgery to remove the lump here.
For the next 9 years, from 1983 to 1992, Bonnie was symptom-free.
I didn't have any experience of any effect from it until 1992, when I developed a small lump in my left breast. I immediately went and got a mammogram, and it didn't show any problem. In fact, they called me back for a scan on the other breast. That was quite reassuring. Not only did they not find a problem with the one where I had the lump, they didn't even want a second shot. I thought it was another expression of a cat scratch fever.
The mammogram ultimately seemed fine. The doctors said, we're not concerned about this. And she went to a couple of alternative practitioners that we knew, and they said, "You're fine." And really, it kind of slipped out of our consciousness at that point. It wasn't something that we worried about or talked about.
I did alternative healing. I had chiropractors, I had an acupuncturist, I had people who were in touch with my system who did not give me the feedback that I was in trouble.
We would talk to our friend who was a doctor and check in with him periodically. And again, we were talking about the illness as cat scratch fever. He would talk to us about cat scratch fever. And no one was really talking about cancer.
In 1999, on my birthday, my 50th birthday, I noticed that the lump was getting bigger. I still didn't know if it was cat scratch fever or cancer.
She did not think it was cancer. She had cat scratch fever in her neck, so it looked similar, it acted similar, and so she felt that that's what it was again, and she wasn't worried.
Despite Bonnie's inner confidence, her condition continued to worsen.
The lump was getting larger and it was changing the shape of her breast. That was concerning to me. I was like, wow, okay, this is intense.
Visibly, the lump was growing, and I knew that it was a serious illness. It was visibly becoming more.
As her condition worsened, Bonnie withdrew to her isolated Northern California home, where she could focus on her personal healing, surrounded by nature.
Where we live here, there is an ancient madrone tree, so large that you can go inside. When the fear would come into my heart, I would go and sit in this grandmother tree and weep.
I remember times when I'd be walking on the property and I would hear Bonnie in there letting out a big scream, and I knew that there were times when that was the best way that she could actually process the pain.
Whenever someone is crying and you hear someone crying, it's very hard to hear that. We want to comfort them, we want to help them, we want to make them stop crying. And yet I had to let her do that and give her the space to go through that deep level of cleansing.
What we were trying to heal was not a lump in the breast, though. Now, you could say that a lump in the breast is the body saying, my feminine part is hurt. What we were healing, you could say, were wounds that were more in the spirit, though they were expressing through the body as well, because body, mind, and spirit are so unified.
As part of her healing process, Bonnie and David began creating meditative artwork.
When David and I create our art, we start with scans of natural elements like flower petals, crystals, feathers, and rocks. We then use the computer as an artistic tool, like an artist uses a brush. We combine the digital elements to create collages, sometimes using sacred geometries and figures. We were incredibly productive. We made hundreds and hundreds of mandalas. If anything, it was as if a stream of energy was coming through. My art was incredibly important to my healing process. It gave me a reason to live. David and I would wake up sometimes in the night and say, are we doing the right thing? There was some sense of anguish, for sure.
There was a place in me that always had faith, but there were other places in me that would get alarmed. I never got to the place where I said, you've got to go to a doctor now, and overrode her intention. But there were lots of times that I wondered, are we doing the right thing?
What began as this lump had spread, and at that stage, I was really shocked at what she had gone through. For most people at that stage, I think we would have run to the doctor,
I knew because it was her breast and a very private part of herself and her body that if she didn't want to expose that to a doctor and the medical system yet, that I needed to respect that. And I did.
After 3 years of confronting her illness, Bonnie saw a clear sign that the path needed to change.
One night, my body spontaneously started shaking. I mean, really on and on.
In the middle of the night, the phone rang, and it was David, and he asked us to come up to the house because Bonnie was not doing well, and my heart dropped.
David called Joanne and Jack, our neighbors, to come support me. And David recalls I went to the bathroom at some point, and he says I passed out. I don't recall that.
She literally passed out in my arms, hit the floor, and that freaked me out.
Whatever fears and anxieties I had were literally being shaken loose from my body.
Bonnie was in bed and just shaking and vibrating, and you know, I just got in with her, and there was a fear of what would be next.
You know, my heart was racing. I was scared.
I was releasing the fear through that shaking. My body was shaking loose something that was in the way.
I actually talked to David, and I said, I think it's something else. I think that it might be breast cancer. And if we don't say anything or do something, you know, we might lose her.
I thought, okay, I have to move out of the cocoon, and now is the time to seek medical help. I knew that I had cancer at that point.
3 harrowing years, Bonnie Bell felt her spiritual wounds had healed, but at the same time, her body had grown gravely ill. The hour had come to leave her mountaintop and to confront her illness in a world she feared would judge her harshly. With remarkable courage, she clung to a vision of wellness and recovery. Bonnie's journey into the medical system took her to San Francisco, where doctors at UCSF confirmed that she did indeed have breast cancer.
It was shocking to realize that I had cancer. I mean, you know, no matter how much you think you know it's the case, when someone tells you, yes, it's cancer, it is shocking.
When the doctor came back and said, you know, it's definitely breast cancer, there was a part of me that knew that, and a part of me that had to really shift my picture of what was going on with her in that moment.
The shock was finding out not that I had cancer, but that it was so advanced.
The results from Bonnie's scans were deeply troubling. Her right breast showed normal breast tissue, but the left revealed a large mass of cancerous tumor. Compounding the alarm, the scans showed dark spots in her bones where the cancer had spread. Bonnie's cancer was stage 4.
Unspoken was the expectation that that was terminal.
When they diagnose you with 4-stage cancer, especially breast cancer, it's pretty scary at that point. I mean, they're pretty much telling you, you know, it doesn't look good.
I had to both receive that that was the stage it was at, and then say, no, I don't accept that this is terminal cancer.
Refusing to accept that her cancer was incurable, Bonnie worked with a team of oncologists, but also found a physician who gave her alternative care.
I was introduced to Dr. Isaac Elias, who is an alternative MD, also an acupuncturist, a really creative healer.
A conventionally trained physician who's also a doctor of Chinese medicine, Dr. Elias treats patients with a unique blend of Western and Eastern traditions.
The journey for healing, the journey especially for healing in cancer, is a journey of integration. It's not of doing one or the other. Doing just alternative medicine purely without conventional medicine doesn't usually work. There are rare cases that it works, but there are also rare cases where people get better without anything. Really where it makes a difference is in the integration. If you look at the way I treat my patients, if you look at their protocol, they always integrate the best of the West with the best of the East.
The diagnosis was breast cancer, and there's more than one kind. I had the kind of breast cancer that was estrogen-driven, and that's why the first line of therapy was suppressing the estrogen level in my body.
To augment the estrogen suppression, Dr. Elias designed a complementary program of alternative therapies.
We used a lot of infrared sauna to detoxify hair. We used high-dose vitamin C IV. We used certain ginseng preparations that we gave her, herbs, supplements, acupuncture, and a lot of healing.
When she would go to Isaac's office, he would often start her with an infrared sauna, which was a small sauna in his office. The heat would be up to about 140 degrees, and she would have to be in there for almost an hour. So it was an intense heat process, but research has shown that heat like that stimulates the immune system, and really the stronger the immune system is, the more power you have to fight the cancer.
Cancer cells are sensitive to oxygen. They don't have antioxidant mechanism. So when you heat the tissue and it has a lot of free radicals from the heat, the cancer cells can't handle it. And then if you give also some nutrients that have similar effect, you put enough pressure on the cells that they start dying. And we could see it with the infrared and the IV. It was amazing. The tumor was shrinking so fast. I mean, nothing like what you expect when you just give a hormonal blockade to somebody.
I started to feel energetically restored quite quickly from the work he was doing. I changed my diet upon his recommendation. I'd always pretty much been a vegetarian, but I went on a very low-fat diet. I used to eat soy, but soy gives you estrogen. That was not good for me. I took a lot of supplements at first. He said not as many as a lot of people take. And then at some point he would switch those supplements. I took mushrooms that are specifically for boosting your immune system. I took the liquid ginseng tonic. It tasted terrible. It was the worst things.
Some of them I tasted myself, and they were revolting.
The regime with the supplements was unbelievable. But boy, she was right there with it, you know.
As I got help, alternative help from Dr. Elias, I started to feel that in addition to healing, I was getting better. I was going to end up and feel I have ended up better off than I was when I got ill.
The small tumors that were visible when she was examined began to shrink and go away. And then within a few months, the larger tumor began to shrink and go away. And that process took about 9 months before there was no more visible sign of cancer.
By the time 9 months had rolled by, I said to David, you know, I'm going to have to say it's healed. It was totally in remission.
It's amazing how something like what happened to Bonnie can happen. This is nothing less than remarkable.
Getting the alternative help is what allowed me to heal so quickly, and what has brought me to a state in which I feel healthier now than when I first got ill, even though I was years younger. I feel like I healed, but I expanded. I became more than I was. Healing was a doorway to myself.
We have helped her. I've helped her by connecting with her, by finding the door, by making the right combination, by having a heart connection. And when you open the heart, and you guide the patient, something like what happened to Bonnie can happen. But it happened because she had the power to do it. She had her inner power. So she really was the leader. She just needed somebody like me to guide her, to give her, to tell her, Bonnie, you are very powerful, but you are on the wrong highway. She's like, yes, you're right. Let's move to this highway. That's it. Let's support you. And we just balanced it. And it really worked.
Western medicine is great. And again, I sought surgery earlier in my life. I haven't renounced it. It does one thing very well. Alternative medicine is a completely different and complementary help. And so that's why I wouldn't have done one without the other.
I think the thing that got Bonnie through this ordeal is a profound level of inner strength. It's hard to imagine going through what she went through, and yet she did it. I don't think I could have done what she did.
I just feel blessed that she's my friend and she made it and she's doing well, and that I could glean something from that in my own life, the strength to survive.
I don't think that her transformation would have been so profound if she hadn't have gone through, as the Chinese say, gone through the jaws of death and come out the other end, you are guaranteed a happy life. And when you look at her, she is guaranteed a happy life.
I know what it's like to have a wife who has cancer. I have compassion for people who are going through that level of confrontation with life and death.
The sense of love was never diminished. I have to say that was key. To be embraced when you're going through it that much is just the most, I'm so grateful. I'm grateful to be alive. I feel a lot of joy. I don't feel that I lost. I feel that I gained. And I hope beyond everything that the treasures that I gleaned will benefit other people on their healing journey.
Throughout Bonnie Bell's struggle with advanced breast cancer, she took charge of her healing and determined her own path. And while a long and difficult journey, Bonnie's road ultimately led to a full recovery.